So, as far as episodes go, I think this one is going to be the least gender focused because I feel like on this episode, everyone is required to take some level of accountability. And if it's not going to be one gender, then it's probably going to be both of us or the entirety of us as a society, because there's a bunch of shit here that needs to be discussed, and it relates to some people on a personal level and to others on a community level. But hey, that all sounds very tough and complicated and boring, so I'll try and spice things up by starting things off by talking about one place you would not have expected me to talk about: India. Now, this is particularly interesting news, at least for anyone who's a bit of a space nerd, but India recently launched its very first mission to go ahead and study the sun. And it sent a satellite there known as Aditya L1. And I'd be getting ready to use that for a joke, except that India recently, at least of the time of this recording, there was very recent news that India is planning to change its name to Bharat, which, I'm not gonna lie, could be something that we should probably worry about, because this almost sounds like India is going woke. Because, I don't know, is it just me, or isn't this the same shit that the West normally tends to do? And I know, it's not like there's any country in the West that's really changed its name over the past 100 plus years, but think about it like this. Woke people will want to assign different forms of gender, which is why in the US of A they have like 100 and something genders. And the same US of A was the one that was busy trying to land people on the moon. Like, you think about it, maybe ever since India realized that they practically produced the CEO of Google and Microsoft, they kind of got to that point where they were like, you know what, they're practically American, if not Indian, so we should make India a little bit more American. So they decide to send some shit into space. Although, then again, it could just be a very nice middle finger to Africa, because if you guys actually remember, there was this Mugabe joke that was going around not too long ago where people were busy talking about how America landed on the moon and Africa doesn't do shit. So all of a sudden, Mugabe is like, nah, we can one-up that and we'll fly to the sun. And people were like, how the fuck could you do that? So Mugabe is like, nah, we are actually smart about this. So instead of going there during the day when it's hot, we'll go there at night. And that joke just made Africans look dumb as shit. But hey, for the most part, at least it used to give people a laugh. But let me just read the story. So the story says, and I quote, India's first sun observation mission, Aditya L1, successfully took off, marking another landmark just after the country's recent moon landing. The spacecraft lifted from Sriharikota at 11:50 Indian time and will journey 1.5 million kilometers away from the Earth, reaching a unique position known as Lagrange Point 1. After a 4-month travel period, Aditya L1 aims to study the sun closely, and its findings will benefit not just India but the global scientific community. End quote. Okay, now, when I kind of think about it again, considering that there are some Indians that do worship the sun and the moon, maybe this is their way of trying to meet their maker. You know, people usually say it as like a catchphrase to kill someone, but these guys probably decided to take it and, you know, kill it with this whole space exploration thing and, you know, actually meet their maker. All puns intended. Which probably just sounds like me trying to force a joke, but you know what I usually don't force? My shit. But the other thing that I don't force is this podcast, which I should have started in a bit of a better way, probably with a little less lightness, with a little bit more substance and a bit more pizzazz when I say, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one breaktime oh, sorry, too much pizzazz. Welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who still wonders if Africans will take their mission to the sun seriously and probably decide to go at night. He's a man who once thought that bukkake was a Japanese form of martial arts. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show used to be called Tweet Street, but Twitter changed its name to X, and then I thought of adding threads, and I didn't know if that would have to change the name, or if I'd have to call it X Street, and then it would sound like a porno. But still, I do more or less the same exact thing, and you can contribute in the same exact way, which is normally a pretty simple drill, almost sounds like a song, goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @Bagaka the D, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and handle it accordingly. On Facebook and on IG, if it happens to be a screenshot, if it happens to be a screen grab, or if it ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to is @Breaktime on Westside, and I will be more than happy to take it from there and handle it accordingly. Now, I have a bunch of cases that I need to handle because I can't call them tweets or X's, but sometimes they require more context than just reading the tweet itself. And to be very honest, I can't even waste too much time on it because I felt like there was like two things to rant about here. Because for those of y'all that have been on Kenyan Twitter, then you probably might have heard about the whole Maverick Aoko losing her shit, which I'm going to get into. But I also have some story about Shakila and claiming that she has a body count of less than 150, which I also feel like I need to address because I feel like there's something about the whole body counts issue that needs to be discussed, which I find just never gets discussed, more so by guys whenever they're talking about it. But for the sake of keeping things in order and having one, I think I'll deal with the Maverick Aoko story first, then I can go to the whole Shakila and the body counts issue. So Maverick Aoko, sometime around the past weekend, decided to hop onto Twitter and she wrote quite the monologue of a tweet where she was busy talking about, the stuff that she's been through and the fact that she's actually been hurt and, busy talking about the reasons why she did what she did. Now, I'm gonna read everything for you guys so that I can get into it because I feel like there's some things that need to be pointed out here and at least 2 points need to be brought forward. So I'm just gonna read it out. So it says, and I quote, "That Kuchotana thing was real, but it was a phase. I hated being vulnerable. I hated harboring feelings. I wanted to hurt men like they've hurt me. Smash and pass. I swear I don't remember their names. I numbed my pain. Men have humiliated me. I had to fuck Mbadi at the parliament building toilets for 20k a month during COVID. I was handling his social media. I was brilliant enough for my job, but because it was corona time, he had power and money. Kujia salary. Don't wear panties. Do you know how much it hurts? Are you aware of my pain or are you just judging? They had just signed the handshake agreement and he was minority leader, but he chose to fuck me every month. He had a choice. I did not. Like I said, it was during COVID. I was trying to survive. I was vulnerable and needy. I had to go to parliament every month in a dress and without panties to get paid. I'm angry. I'm bitter. That's what everyone says. It's true. But did you bother to ask why? I lost my job at Standard for these motherfuckers. My career. I cry in my bed most nights. I can't love even men who want to love me because shit. I'm cold. I killed feelings." End quote. Okay, from what I've read here, there's quite a lot to be unpacked. Some people were going on about how she's probably suffering from depression and she's really going down and she needs to be helped. And personally speaking, I do not know if this is a clout chase or if this is a cry for help, but either way, I am not a qualified mental health professional to really come to some sort of conclusion. And when you actually look at a lot of the shit that Maverick Aoko's posted up over the past year, hell, even the past year and a half, you find that she's very willing to say a lot of things just for the engagement on Twitter. So you can't entirely be too sure. But with that said, I think there's some two things that I feel like a lot of babes and hell, maybe even guys need to really pick from all of this. And I'm not saying this to judge the woman or whatever the hell she's done or what she feels, but I'm just saying it as a point of learning. So first of all, I think after the history that we've had with politicians, I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, but I just don't see where you'd actually find the strength to trust them or find it in your heart. Personally, I do not know where people find it in their hearts to trust a politician to the point where they are willing to risk their job for the politician. Or at least that's how it was implied on this particular tweet, because it's like, the way she's put it, the assumption is that she started doing some work with a politician and either quit the job or she kind of put herself in the limelight so much that, Standard ended up having to drop her. But that's sort of besides the point. I feel like trusting a Kenyan politician to live up to their promises is like trusting that the stripper will actually like you after the lap dance. It's not impossible, it's just the chances of that happening damn. But anyways, besides that one, I think the bigger issue over here is an issue of boundaries. Now, granted, she did say that, she was trying to survive and shit and she wasn't making money. But you're handling a politician's social media and being fucked by him for 20 grand. Like, I'm not saying that it's a little or it's a lot. It's just, with that kind of money, you can probably just ask for either one of the two. Like, it's either I'm going to do your social media and you give me the 20 grand, or I'll just fuck you and you give me the 20 grand. Like, I feel like to a certain degree, the guy was busy crossing boundaries and she let it happen for it to get to the point where he's like, hey, if you want to come and pick your salary, come to parliament and make sure you have, no panties on and make sure it's a dress. Like, by the time he's getting to that point, there has to have been a build-up. Because I don't think that any guy, or even most guys, will literally just jump to that point without it having some sort of a build-up. Because I don't think most guys actually can do that, regardless of their level of power. Then after that, choosing to go and fuck a bunch of other niggas, all in the name of hurting men, usually just ends up hurting the babe. Like, at the end of the day, if you don't draw boundaries, especially when it comes to sex, like, as a babe, you actually end up really, really losing out. Because the moment you start banging the niggas, then they lose respect for you. The moment you start banging the bosses or the managers, then most of the other employees lose respect for you. The moment that you start banging every other dude in the hopes that you can find a man to make your husband, then any potential husband will probably lose respect for you. At the end of the day, even though the women are in this day and age of sexual liberation and shit, I think y'all need to understand that there's a certain amount of respect and power that comes with you guys not having sex. Like, you don't necessarily have to be a virgin and shit, or, have someone waiting for 90 days per se, but the easier you are to shag by as many people, the lower your value will be. Like, that's just a rule of thumb around society. Regardless of how you want to think about it, that's just how people will look at you at the end of the day. And for my fellow men out there, if you are aspiring to be in power, or if you are ever at a point of power, please do not ruin a woman's life, whether or not you get the pussy. Like, there's people who ruin a woman's life because they got the pussy, and there's those ones who ruin a woman's life because they didn't get the pussy. Either way, neither is good. Please just try and keep it in your pants, and if you're unable to do that, then at least just offer some sort of constructive assistance, not just either shooting someone to the top or shooting someone through the dirt just because you got or didn't get some pussy. But then again, I don't know, maybe because I haven't been in a position of power for a while, maybe I don't know this shit. Either way, I am going to leave it at that and move things on. So we need to get to the cases, and our very first case, like I said earlier on, is going to involve the woman known as Shakila. Now, for those of y'all that don't know or remember who or what Shakila is a very young babe who got particularly famous after she decided to go online on an Instagram live with Christian Della, busy talking about the many celebrities and top tier men that she has screwed and how she just plans on being a hoe for life. She also did get on to Tory Lanez's IG live during COVID, which, if you remember, during that time was quarantine radio. And, she tried to represent Kenya, and we kind of weren't feeling her all that much. But anyways, she did really end up making waves. She's really been making waves as a hoe out here, or so she claims to be doing. And very recently, she was asked by SPM Buzz, the media company, during an interview how many men she's banged. So they were asking her body count, and eventually she settled on less than 150. Now, normally I'd have the video play, but I feel like most of it was a back and forth, which was very pointless. And instead of having an entire 1 minute 20 play, like, I might as well just get to the punchline and say less than 150, which is exactly what she said. And the thing that I wanted to discuss about it, because I feel like the whole body counts thing has been spoken about time and time again, and everyone is like, oh, low body count. But what people don't usually discuss is the problems with high body count. Now, of course, people will talk about how a babe with more than 10, a babe with more than this amount is a hoe, or, she's not good marriage material and shit. And I guess if you want to stick to that belief, that's entirely up to you. But when you look at the much higher tier numbers, I think there also needs to be some level of control when you get to a certain point. And this is something that I've believed in for quite a while. It's not necessarily a theory that I have per se, but I've always believed that if you cross the 3-digit mark in body count, so 100 plus, then at that point it's not even about the sex. There's something else that's an issue, and you're busy trying to compensate, or you're busy trying to cover for that shit by having a shit ton of sex with a shit ton of people. And this is regardless of gender, whether you're male, whether you're female. If you subscribe to some other gender, which I don't really give a shit about, it still applies to you. And the reasoning for this is, if you ever have sex with multiple people, and for the guys that have quite a bit of experience with this, you can probably resonate with what I'm saying. After you've banged person after person after person, the thrill kind of dies. At least for us guys, if you have a lot of sex with a lot of different women over a short period of time, that thrill is great, but at some point it starts to die down. And eventually, every new babe starts to almost feel the same in some sort of way, which is where now you start hearing some guys saying it's just pussy. Like, it doesn't feel any different, or it's not like I have the psych for it anymore, because even though I'm going and I'm banging a new chick here or a new chick there, it's just pussy. The moment you start hearing someone saying that, then you know very well that this is someone who's been overdoing it. Which is why I've also said on this podcast, if you ever start to get to this point as a guy where you feel like it's just pussy, then you're probably overdoing it and you need to dial that shit down. And for most guys, you don't even need to get to 50 or 60 to get to this point. You can literally be banging 5-6 babes on rotation and you already start to feel that way. And I don't have to say this from experience, this is stuff that other guys will normally say. Like, when you start doing it so much, at some point it actually starts to lose its value. So for the most part, if you're continuing, and this is single digit numbers that make you feel this way, if you're going to the dual digits and you're going all the way to over 100, there might be an ego issue that you're trying to solve. There might be some sort of an addiction that you're trying to counteract, or there could be something that you're trying to compensate for, which you feel like you having sex with multiple people will probably cover up for, which isn't usually the case. So if you're someone that knows that you're inching towards that 3-digit mark, or you're trying to bang as many women as possible and you're trying to get there, or even men, then maybe you need to examine yourself, or maybe go and seek some professional help, because clearly there's something that's wrong and you're using sex to solve it, and it's usually not that great in terms of helping you solve shit. Either way, I need to leave that case aside because I have a couple of others that I need to sort out. So moving it on to our very next case. Now, there was a tweet here which I saw, which I found to be particularly interesting. So it says, and I quote, "Dating in your 30s as a man is no joke. You'll be doing your best to make a relationship work because you know how hard it is based on previous experiences to find a connection. But it'll register to them as a desperation, the absence of options. A man has to be disorganized, unfocused, and broken to be eligible. Because if he is so good, why hasn't he been snatched up yet?" End quote. Now, having read this, I don't know if I can agree to it or not. Personally, I'm not 30 years old, so I don't have enough experience in this. But considering that most guys now are actually marrying from 30 going up, I don't think that this point carries as much weight. Now, granted, if you're a 40-year-old man and all of this shit is very well done and you're not married yet, then yes, some of those questions will be asked, because I've heard babes ask that sort of question before. The whole, he's so well organized but there's no woman in his life, is there something wrong with him? Is he gay? They'll ask or just wonder some of these questions because they don't understand why such a well-mannered, well-placed dude hasn't been cuffed yet at the advanced age that you are. And this is actually proof that, the whole, as a man, you're always going to be in the market, blah, 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 your value appreciates and shit, in some cases can be taken as a pack of bull. Because for some of these guys, they're trying to attract someone, and the babe goes and sees how well placed the guy is and how well organized he is, and they match that with the age, and suddenly they're like, how come this guy hasn't been cuffed yet? So in that particular case, Now this guy has to at least explain why he's taken such a long time before he decided to settle down. So things like early history of drug abuse, or probably having not done the right shit at the right time when he was younger, or tried to stack up some cash or some shit, or maybe just working hard to create a very good financial foundation for a family. Like, I think those are reasons that make absolute sense. But the unfortunate reality is that there's some women who are very old school, who believes that if there's a man who is into his 30s, or at least towards his late 30s, who hasn't settled down yet and he has his life going on for him, then there's definitely something wrong. Either way, I don't think that mentality is still there for the most part, but I could be wrong about it. But I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very final case of this episode. Now, it was written by a woman, and there was a tweet, and it says, and I quote, "Societies that still have men in charge, e.g. the Arabs, insist on their women having more children. As feminized societies compete, which woman can be more independent and have less children. And you wonder who will be in charge of the future. They have already conquered England." End quote. Okay, now, can I really say that I agree with this? That the whole, having more children and, the whole masculine and having the men in charge thing is always going to work out? Yes, but not for the reasons that this person is talking about. Now, granted, from a population standpoint, yes, they could be taking over, and, the West can be overrun by, a bunch of people who choose to be polygamous, and, that can be all funny and interesting to watch. But if you actually look at it, I don't think they're doing this because it's the men in charge or they're against a feminized society or anything of that sort. I think it just goes down to their culture and their social and business practices that will actually make them take over the world. Because you think about it, like, for these guys, and I'll use the example of like the Somalis, for them, having multiple kids is a blessing. Like, that's a sign of blessings and they're happy about it. So even though you have 3 wives and 16 children, my nigga, you probably feel blessed about that shit. Bills can be an issue and shit, but if you look at it as a blessing, then of course you're going to try and have more kids. Now, when you come to the West, or at least when you come to what she was referring to as a feminized society, that's not exactly the case. Kids are a massive ass bill. If you think I'm lying, you can just take a walk to your nearest mall and look for any shop that sells baby clothes or anything that is related to babies, or you can just go to the supermarket and look through the costs of formula and diapers and shit. Then you can understand why people in feminized or individualized societies will look at the idea of having a baby or having multiple children and consider it a liability. Then also, these guys are all about helping each other. So if it comes to projects, if it comes to getting loans, if it comes to assisting each other, even in things like taking care of like the people around you, like these guys can count on each other to assist each other, whether it's brother to brother, whether it's, like guys who've grown up together and shit, because they live so closely together and, they can trust on each other and actually navigate the social and the business lives pretty much together. These guys can trust each other for the most part. A lot of us people in individualized societies, we're not that good at trusting, and we like to do shit ourselves, and we like to be successful by ourselves, and we like to grow by ourselves. So at the end of the day, because these guys are all trying to grow as a group and they're all working together and they look at children as a blessing, of course they're going to take over. Although then again, since probably I may not understand economics or, like population dynamics and shit, I might be wrong about this. So I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On X, it is at BagakaTheD. On Facebook and on IG, it is at Breaktime on Westside. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.